Thanks, Peter. Raise your hand, mute's off. What are dissonant intervals? Which numbers?
1, 2, 10, 11.
Exactly. And modal intervals?
3, 4, 8, 9.
Yes. And then perfect intervals?
5 and 7.
5, 7.
So 6 is included. The tritone is included in the perfect intervals. Okay, so it's weird because the harmonic stacking, there are dissonances above, but we include the 6th tritone as a perfect interval. Okay, all right. So one of the things you want to perhaps do is have the feeling of the different physical vibrations, where 1s and 2, the dissonant intervals, have a 7 cycles per second. Versus a modal interval, which has a 4 cycles per second. Versus, so 7 cycles versus 4 cycles, dissonant versus modal, and then perfect intervals have a 2 cycles per second. If you listen really closely, you can actually hear the 7 cycles per second of the dissonant intervals. And then perfect intervals. And then modal intervals of 4 cycles. And then so try to have a few exercises where you're really separating out the dissonant, modal, and perfect. And maybe it's a good idea to sit at the keyboard and then really feel that waves, 7 versus 4 versus 2 cycles per second. Okay, all right, let's go to the Dandelot. Here we go. Remind me, we were doing 21, 22, 23, 24. Is that correct? Yeah, okay, all right. So let's do, I'm gonna do small screen. Here we go. All right, so who's doing 20? Rachel.
I can go for it. Oh, never mind.
Okay, Rachel, Peter, Amy, Alec, EJ. Okay, and Claire. All right, so Rachel, 20 is yours, 15 seconds to scan.
Is there a certain tempo you'd like us to go at?
72?
Quarter equals 72?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I just get my metric now.
Okay.
So, okay. All right. C, F, E, A, F, B, C, F, G, D, A, E, G, C, A, E, D, G, B, E, C, A, D, B, C, G, E, A, F, D, B, E, C, E, A, G, B, E, C, F, G, C, B, G, C, A, G, D, C, G, E, B, C.
Excellent. So tell the orchestra what happened.
Well, in the first line towards like sort of the middle / end, I like got mixed up and then I kept thinking back on it. So I kind of like messed up the notes after that. Mm-hmm. And so I had to skip a couple of beats to get back on track. And then it was a little bit better for the second line because I kind of found my groove.
Excellent. So another thing we can practice while we're doing these exercises is we want to practice delivering the most amount of information without using a lot of words. So you used about 37 words to describe what happened in that moment, right? So we want to use the rule of the 3 W's: where, what, why. right? So can you reduce what you just told us in the same, but deliver the same information, but maybe with less words?
Okay. First line I had looking back error, so I messed up the notes afterwards. And second line was better.
Much better. Okay. But I would even challenge you. You can even do better than that, right? So seventh beat, I missed the A for a look back, and second line went better, right? So, and this is in practice to reduce the amount of words that you're saying to the choir or orchestra that you're working with, because the more you talk, the less they will understand and input the information, right? So, as I said, all of these exercises are microcosm of the actual interaction you're going to have with people that you'll be conducting, right? So each time you do an exercise, actually practice identifying what happened, right? What happened? Where? Why did it happen? Right? So that you're actually diagnosing the problem and then giving sort of a cure for that problem, right? Excellent. Next is Peter, 21.
All right.
Ah,
Mobile's, there we go. Okay. Sorry, the mobile's a little bit weird. You were covering up 21, but I'm back on it. My computer's webcam is just not having it, but I can see it right
okay.
now.
That's fine. Yeah.
And sol, re, do, ti, do.
Yeah. Remember, we want flow. Okay. So even if you're going to not say the notes, don't sort of hesitate and slow down and accommodate. Right.
Sorry, that was me looking for each note to the point where I could actually hop back on.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's better than trying to just find a spot and anticipate rhythm to come in on that spot.
Sure.
I feel like it's probably more,
Right.
yeah.
Now, if that's happening, that means you're going to make more than 3 errors. They need to do something to change the equation so it's a little easier. So you may slow down the pulse, the overall pulse a little bit. Yeah.
Sol, re, do, ti, do, sol, la, mi, sol, do, re, sol, la, mi, do, re, fa, la, do, la, sol, re, sol, la, re, fa, ti, do, mi, fa, sol, do, la, mi, do, sol, do.
Okay. All right. So you made about 5 errors. So this is about the right speed for you. Okay. So, okay. Diagnose what happened. Tell the orchestra what happened.
Yeah. I think I'm getting to the point where I don't feel like I'm anticipating a mistake. I feel like just the mistake is happening where I'm just looking at one note ahead and only really focusing on where that kind of happened. And I think in my process, I need to establish more of like, all right, catching up points along where this is a hard part, but at least I know what's coming. So I can hop back on the music from here.
Okay, so when you were scanning in the 15-second scanning process, what aspects were you scanning?
First, I was scanning for any first off notes that usually trip me up. I remember that la above the staff I usually interpret as do, so just double checking that I'm not doing that.
You're used to singing bass clef. Okay.
Actually, it's just me being bad at ledger time. Right. To each their own. And other than that, I'm looking for bigger leaps that are stranger than normal. Okay. And also trying to find patterns and sort of runs like that do, la, mi, do was really helpful to come towards the end. But yeah.
Yeah. So I would also say that, What's actually strange is you sort of half the tempo, right? So you're doing eighth note equals like 70, whatever the tempo is, right? Rather than dum bim bum bum bim bum bum. And what we notice is in your delivery, there is sort of a guttural tension in your throat. So eh, uh, so you're actually allowing the stoppage of flow, right? So dee da dee da dee da dee da. Try to be in that mode of flow, even if you're going be ba, rather than ba e right? Because that's going to actually stop the flow of traffic. Okay, and in fact, that is symptomatic of you looking at note by note, right? So try to think of a sort of, rather than a chicken vision, what we call chicken vision versus eagle vision, right? You don't want to be looking right at the bark of the tree, but like a little bit further away so you can see the shape of the tree, maybe even the bit of a forest, right? So that way you're kind of looking a little further ahead, right? So, our brain, if you train it in a way, has the ability to perceive much more than you allow it to. For example, if you look around your room right now, okay, and close your eyes, and then recall, you'll be able to recall most of your room because you've been in that room, you're familiar with that room, you're the surrounding of that room. It's a room that's familiar to you. All right. So your brain actually is capable. People say there are people who have photographic memory and then there are people who don't have photographic memory. I don't think that's the case. I actually think your brain is able to perceive everything around you. It's just that you are unwilling to let that power be cultivated in full. So same thing happens with reading music. If you zone in to each note, right, where you're focusing on each note one at a time, then your ability to look ahead is, in fact, you're crushing it. You're quashing that ability. Your eye is able to look at the whole line, right? If you allow it to, it can actually take a picture of that whole line and deliver it, right? But we tend to limit our perception and say, I need to identify that note one at a time. So this sense of flow that I'm talking about, it's sort of a key to unlocking that peripheral vision, that your ability of your eye to perceive the whole line, the whole piece, actually, the whole page in an instant. Okay? And this is not a sort of a metaphysical exercise. This is actual, you have the ability to take a picture of that whole page and recall it. It's just that our unwillingness to allow our brain to function at a maximum rate is putting you into a chicken vision way where you focus on each note at a time, where you don't allow your eye to look ahead. Does that make sense? Right? For many pianists, they are so used to looking ahead 2-3 bars at a time, right? In fact, if you're page turning for somebody, sometimes they'll go ahead, and then there's like 4 bars left, and you're thinking it's surely too soon to turn the page, but the pianist is going, now, turn it now, because I already know what's coming up. Okay, so in the same way, we allow our brain only a smidgen amount of narrow band of information to be processed. And if you allow this sense of flow to occur, this sense of looking at the whole picture, the whole forest as an eagle vision, then you'll be actually able to perceive a lot more of the information than you think you are able to. Okay, so this week when you practice this, try looking maybe 2 notes at a time, and then you can do that, and then do four notes at a time, then 6 notes, then 8 notes. Take a picture, recall, do 8 notes. Take a picture, recall 8 notes. Right? So get used to this sense of widening your peripheral vision so you can perceive much more information, because your eye is looking, like, look at the line 21. Your eye is able to look at everything on that line. Right? You don't have to look at it in real time. You don't have to do that. You look at the line, take a picture, your eye just looked at everything. Your brain just registered what that shape looks like. So that means you have the ability to perceive the entire line. But our unwillingness to let our, like, it's the little crazy swim coach who yells at you in the pool, who says, no, you can't do that. You have to say one note at a time, look at one note at a time. All your attention has to be on that note as you're saying it at a time. This is really crucial. Your ability to unlock your brain's perception of things is directly related to how calm and how flowing you are in your delivery. The moment you start to have this tension anywhere in your body, in your throat, you're narrowing the bandwidth. Okay? Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
But you have to practice this. You can't just, you can't unlock it automatically because you have been so conditioned to read music in this sort of narrow band way, one note at a time. All right. So you have to allow this sense of, has any of you practiced speed reading? Yeah. So the concept with speed reading is, let me go to my, you push, when we read, right, we're basically reading out loud in our brain silently, correct? Right? So, well, okay, so speed reading is to disassociate your usual default of reading one word at a time in your head, out loud in your head, right? In the beginning. And so, but rather than, it's the speed reading is cutting off that sense of speaking out loud each word, but pushing your brain to perceive the word in faster than real time. So in the beginning, you go, the exercise usually is you have a little bell, right? So every 30 seconds, you push your speed to twice the speed, and then bell rings and you'd read at a normal rate for you for a minute. And then the next 30 seconds, you push your rate to 3 times the speed. And then, of course, your comprehension goes down a little bit, right? But as you do this, there comes a point, it's sort of like a breaking point where your brain starts to understand, oh, I don't need to say out loud each word for me to comprehend the passage, right? So there comes a point where you are able to, because you go 2 times the speed, normal speed, 3 times the speed, normal speed, 4 times the speed, normal speed. And what you find is your normal speed is getting faster. And then it gets to a point where up to a certain point, you're just speaking the word faster in your head. Okay, but then there comes a point where it's physically impossible to say the word out loud in your head, and then the tether is broken, and then now your pushing speed is your reading speed. So your normal speed now is your pushing speed. So then the exercise is, let's say the book margin is like this, right? And then at first you're underline each line all the way, and then you reduce 10%. So you use the peripheral vision, so last word of each line, you don't actually underline, okay? And then you widen that, right? So instead of doing this, it becomes like this, right? And then pretty soon it becomes like this, right? So you actually, that's speed reading, okay? So, and I just did like a speed reading course that I took for 6 months in like 5 minutes. So, but basically the concept is you sever the cord that says you have to read out each word out loud in your head as you read. Okay, so now there are different kinds of reading. There's reading you do for pleasure, where you really revel and taste each word. Then in that case, you do like, slow, and you enjoy the sound and construction of each word. But then there is like a report where you need to get through the report, the 60-page report, and you need to have the 3-sentence summary of it. And then you speed read in a way, I get the gist, okay? All right, and then there's like a biology text where you do have to know all the words, and then you can slow that down a little bit, right? So it depends on the context of what you need in terms of what information you need to get out of that reading material, right? And so if you're going to be a pre-med student or a biology student, you just have to have the ability to get through the text faster than reading speed, because otherwise, you're not going to make it. Okay, but in the same concept, sight reading music, there's a same conception. If you get stuck on each note at a time, and then you're not reading ahead, you're not getting the sense of that phrase, right, a 4-bar phrase, right, then you're not going to be able to make music in a flowing way, right? Benjamin Zander has this demonstration. You look up Benjamin Zander and comparing musicianship of 5-year-olds. So a first year a 5-year-old child playing the piano will go 1 and 2 and 3 and emphasize every 8th note, and then after a year is 1 and 2 and 3, and then after 4 years is 1 and 2 and 3, and he calls it one hip on the piano playing. Yeah, and the whole piece is sort of this one long movement, right? So the more you divide the music into, so meaning the piece has a point at which we arrive. Where are we going to? Where are we coming from? That sense of this is going to this point. Right, rather than music is happening every beat and I don't know what note is important, right? So in the same way, if you read solfege or whatever it is, your sight reading, in this same way, every note is important without any importance to any hierarchy, then you are doing the chicken vision rather than the eagle vision. Okay, that took way too long to explain, all right? But always have that in mind as you do these exercises, okay? All right, Amy. 22, I believe. Yes, 22.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
C G A C G D E C D G C D G C F G E A D A G D E C C F D A G C F C A F D G C G E C B F G E C G A D G D C E G A C G E A D A G E C C A F D A G E C E G G A E C.
Excellent. Tell the orchestra what happened.
I kind of tripped up around the first line. I feel like.
Do you know exactly where?
And no, but
Okay.
I feel like I was constantly.
This is really important. So you have to have the ability to track what happened during the performance or read through of a passage. So, if you tell the orchestra, hey, and in the first part of the piece, there was something happened like there. Anybody know where that was? Well, the orchestra is going, really? You don't know what happened where? So you have to have the ability to track, beat 5 or beat 4, this happened, right? And who, so in orchestra, it'll be not just where, but who, what. And then you add the why, right? If you can. Okay. What I loved was that you had flow, right? And there were just 2 or 3 places where a little bit of tension crept into your voice. Okay. And I really got the sense that you were at least perceiving at least 2 notes, maybe even 4 notes at a time. Okay. Now, what happened as it got towards the 3rd line? I sort of smelled a sense of panic and fear. Okay. First 2 lines, you're really calm. But the 3rd line, your attention, your ability to focus was waning. Okay, and there's a sense of I gotta get to the end. So keep that calmness all the way through the piece. All right, and sometimes as we do these exercises, as our brain gets tired, that sense of panic can creep in, right, and it comes in the form of tension. Right, so always try to free whatever your tension points are. And the best way to do that is notice where the tension is. Is it in your throat? Is it in your neck? Okay, excellent. Alec, 23.
I'm going to do a little bit of a different tempo because
All right, that's fine.
C, G, E, B, A, E, C, F, D, A, F, B, C, G, E, B, C, C, F, B, E, C, A, D, D, F, E, C, B, A, F, G, C, F, B, A, C, B, G, D, C, F, C.
Okay, hang on. Two things happen. Okay, you're really flow and in flow, but as things happen, I could actually hear the swim coach yelling at you and berating you. Okay, you can't let that happen. All right, just drop it. There's no value judgment here. It's just we're training our brain, and in fact, when errors occur, welcome that, because that's our chance to evaluate. Okay, what is happening there? Why am I sort of falling down there? Why am I misperceiving something? All right, so it's your chance to gather data. But if you're too busy getting yelled at, then you won't be able to actually figure out what's happening in that moment. All right, so when something happens, an error occurs, or you've gone off the path, oh, awesome, I can now figure out why I'm going off the path. So welcome that as an opportunity to learn about how you're perceiving information. All right, so because for me, as a person who grew up in a very patriarchal society, this is really hard for me, where I get yelled at for not being perfect, right? So this constant pressure to be perfect is the loudest voice in my head, right? And it took a long time for me to sort of quell that and say, okay, I can't learn if people are yelling at me, all right? So, and most of all, if I'm yelling at myself. So you have to really quell that voice of whoever's telling you to be perfect down there, like tell them to shut up and say, listen, I need to figure out what's happening here. So oh, awesome, I missed that note. Why did I miss that note? Okay, and I'm telling you, this is crucial. So many people have limit their ability to improve because they're so busy berating themselves for mistakes. Okay, mistakes is an opportunity. Failure is an opportunity to improve and to learn about what's happening. Okay, so welcome it. Right, missing notes meaning you're right at that boundary of your uncomfortableness. Right, that's where the most learning takes place. Right, most people are afraid of that failure, so they never approach that boundary, and they just stay within that safe boundary of where they don't make mistakes, and hence they don't improve their skill sets. So welcome the fact that you are making mistakes. Awesome. I'm in that sweet spot of zone where I can make improvements. Right. Okay. Now let's examine what happened. Can you identify where those mistakes happened exactly?
Yeah, everywhere there's ledger lines.
Okay. So
I get crosstalk from bass clef.
Excellent. So now you know that whenever there's a ledger line and there's a momentary discombobulation of, is this bass line or treble clef, right? So you know that's going to be one of your tendencies that you got to look out for. Okay, what else?
After the screwing up on a ledger line, I'd have trouble getting back in.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is why I kind of went on so much about the yelling swing coach. If you allow that voice to be louder than your ability to perceive, then you're going to be kind of stuck in that zone where you can't get back in. Right. So you got to say, okay, drop that, and then and come back in. Right. So in the beginning, it'll be like 3 beats where you're out. Right. Because you have to actually stop, tell them to shut up, and then come back in. Right. But try to see if you can make that shift back in to less than 3 beats, maybe 2 beats, maybe even just a beat. All right. So if you miss something, okay, fine. Next beat, come back in. Right. So a good exercise for you, Alec, maybe going through. Right. But then if you make a mistake, okay, just drop it and then come back in the very next beat, and see if you can do that as an exercise. Okay. All right. 24. EJ.
Okay. Do, la, so, mi, re, si, so, mi, do, so, mi, do, so, mi, la, do, la, fa, re, si, so, mi, do, la, fa, re, si, so, mi, do, si, so, si, re, fa, la, so, mi, do, re, si, so, re, mi, do, si, fa, si, re, fa, la, so, si, so, mi, re, si, so, la, fa, re, la, so, mi, la, do, la, fa, re, si, so, si, do.
Okay, three things. Usually, I would really recommend working with the metronome because if you don't, you will allow yourself to accommodate to your slowing tempo because where you ended up was about 2 clicks or 3 clicks slower than your starting tempo. Okay, and then you have this tendency to you have to correct it to the right note. Right, so it's
Okay.
the sense of I have to get it right. I gotta get it perfect. No, if you miss it, let it drop. Because in fact, if you're playing in an orchestra, if you're conducting an orchestra, it's actually more important that you stay with a steady pulse, right? Then go back a beat or go back half a beat to fix it with the right note. Because then the orchestra's like, I have no idea what you're doing. Okay, so you're every time you made a mistake, you went back in time or stopped time briefly so you can say the right note, and then you lost your place in where the pulse is. Okay, and so that's an exercise you're gonna have to really do. You're gonna have to allow yourself to miss a couple beats, miss a couple notes, but maintain where you are. If you miss it, great, and come back in, right? Because the rest of the orchestra is playing along, right? Okay, so prevent yourself from going back to say it correctly. That's going to be really hard for you to actually practice because you're so used to and go back and fix it. Okay, I'm sure you do that in your playing as well. One of the things, if you're a string player, the shift, right, is important. Okay, but every time you practice the wrong shift and you go back or you play the right note in out of time, then you're actually not learning how to do that shift in real time. Right? Same thing with the fingering in the piano. Okay, so don't go back and fix, right? Because in your mind, oh, okay, I went back and fixed it, so I played the right note. So then you don't register it as an error. Right? It's more important that it is clearly, okay, I was out for 3 notes there. What happened? Okay, so because right now, because you went back to fix things, it's much harder to remember, okay, where did I make the mistake? It's much easier to register, okay, I didn't even say the 3 notes in that portion. What happened? So you can go back to those places specifically. Yeah, I missed that beat, that beat, that beat. Rather than you went back and fixed, and then you finished it and you kind of like, I slowed down a little bit and I made some errors, but I have no idea what happened. Okay? All right. I'm going to move on, okay? Because it's already after the hour. So we have a couple things in the map. Wednesday, we're not meeting because Cornell is giving everybody a break from classes. So please take some self-care time. Take a hike around beautiful campus, or if you're not in Ithaca, go outside and put the mask on and walk around, okay? And take some time. But we have an assignment coming up, which I believe is, where'd it go? So October 14th is the recording comparison report. I'm going to ask you to actually complete that by Wednesday, okay? And then I'll give you feedback, okay? Because the next assignment due after that is November 1, which is the sample concert season. So I'll take some time to talk about that and what you need to do today. But I also want to get into 2 of the excerpts upcoming, the next excerpt to record, which will be one of these. Here, let me go back to the. Okay, so we're done with Dandlo today. So continue to work on Dandlo. Okay, so the next 2 excerpts that you can choose from will be the Emperor Waltz or the Brahms variation on a theme by Haydn, variation number 8. Okay, I'm going to tell you that the Brahms variation is the harder of the 2. Okay, because Brahms does this thing where like this bar, 342. This is really hard to keep track of if you're not used to it. Okay, it's really a fantastic thing, but this is the harder version to conduct because this is a triple meter in 1, and you have to incorporate all of the triple figure. the emphasis of the second beat, the versus the first beat, third beat. 1, 2, dee da da dim da da dee da do da dee do da da dee do da da dee da da, and so on. Right. The ending is also quite tricky. The second part is really tricky because you have to keep track of both the upper line and the bottom line. And then ya da dee da da dee da da, this sort of off syncopated eighth notes. Okay, so that's the harder of the two. The Strauss is challenging because it is in triple meter. It's in 1, but if you do all the rubatos in the traditional places, then you have to go in and out of 3 and 1. Okay, so we'll go over that in a second. Let me go to, and then one more thing that I'm offering as a benefit to you is the subscription to, did you guys get an email regarding Aurelia software? Okay, so you should have gotten a email. So let me share the screen again. So one of the things I get is I'm asked to review all kinds of platform and textbooks and whatnot. But I got an invitation to a ear training / music theory platform called Aurelia. And so normally this is like, I think $20 or $25 per month per user to use, but I have a license for up to 12 students until December. So I'm gonna let you have access to this. And this is completely optional, everybody. So it's not required. But you're welcome to explore this program. And I've been tinkering with it over the weekend, and I found so many things in it that I think you might find very useful. So it has whole slew of things you can practice: interval comparison, pitch, melody, chords, rhythm, harmony, repertoire. So it's actually pretty fantastic. So just for example, like let's say interval recognition, right? So you can, so there's a whole step, yay, and so on. So you can practice on your own many of the things we're actually working on in class as well, right? So how do I close? Okay. So you're welcome to explore this on your own. I don't want to go through the whole lesson right now. It's there's no cost to you. You don't have to pay to get in. Your first name is your login, and your the password is 2120 conducting. No caps. Okay. So explore at your will. All I ask is that you do spend some time, and then let me know what you think about the platform and software, whether it'd be a good addition to a conducting course in the future to be included. I've always sort of taught sort of my own Boulanger style oral skills without any other additional, because I don't like students paying extra software fees or user fees. But I found this to be have so many resources that I might consider as just part of the required textbook kind of situation in the future. So explore at your will. Okay, all right. And then let's talk about the assignment of the Ithaca Symphony season. But before I go into that, any questions on the recording comparison assignment? Okay, all right. So the Ithaca Symphony Orchestra, this is an imaginary orchestra. And what I'm asking you to do is plan a season, maybe 4 concerts. So in a normal per service orchestra, very similar to maybe the Cayuga Chamber Orchestra, right? You would have 4 masterwork subscription concerts, which means, it's your usual sort of overture, soloist, symphony sort of format is the most usual, right? Along with the young person's concert, which is usually a little bit shorter, and having sort of short excerpted pieces, because obviously these are younger students. So although I kind of disagree with this idea that younger children are able to observe less. But for example, like when I've done a young person's concert one year at Cornell, I had a 20-minute clarinet concerto by Joan Tower, but it was I thought the young people would be able to handle it because it basically is a circus act for the soloist, because it requires the soloist to play all kinds of in a virtuosic manner. Even if you don't understand anything about music, just the sheer physicality of the piece is that it's a spectacle, right? But I've also went to play a concert at the Cayuga Heights Elementary School for a group of about 100 children, age ranging from second grade to fifth grade, and I played Shostakovich's Chamber Symphony, which is a 20-minute piece. But I talked about how composers express their emotion. So I kind of related to, if you had a younger brother who's taking all your toys and books, and you were so frustrated about that younger brother, like how would you feel? And then if you wrote a piece of music about your anger and frustration, well, this is a piece Shostakovich wrote about his frustration in dealing with Stalin in a very restrictive society. And lo and behold, I had comments from parents saying, like, when I was describing this 20-minute piece, they were all afraid that all the students would not be able to handle sitting still quietly for 20 minutes. But in fact, we had a really rapt, attentive group of 100 elementary school kids who, like, they really loved it. In fact, on that concert, we even did a piece by Barry Sharp, who was a DMA composer. It was about a 15-minute piece, all aleatoric and atonal, but it was a piece designed where players are spreading out through the cafeteria, and even that piece they loved. So I think this idea that somehow young people's concert has to be dumbed down is it's a really it's the idea of an adult thinking a fourth grader doesn't have the creativity to actually listen to music, right? So what I would love for you to design is, so you have two options. One is sort of a pre-pandemic sort of situation where we're not thinking about social distancing, and you can have these forces. So this means 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassoons, 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, tuba, timpani, strings. So basically a full symphonic orchestra, right? So you can plan a 4 subscription concert, sort of masterwork situation, a young person's concert, which doesn't necessarily have to be all sort of excerpts or dumbed down pieces, and a pops concert, right? So that's your option, right? And then you can think about budget, how much it would cost to hire players. So one of the things that you have to consider is, if you're doing a piece that's a string orchestra only, that means all of your winds and brass and percussion are sitting out, right? So if you're hiring all these people, then you want all the people to play in all of the pieces. So that's one of the things you have to think about. One of the great resources is the Daniels orchestra music, and you can access this through the Cornell Library, where no, that's not it. Orchestral music. So it gives you, and if you actually access this through the Cornell Music Library, you can actually access the whole database. And you can look up pieces through simple search, where you just put in the composer or the work title, or advanced search, where you can set the instrumentation, and you can choose instruments. Yeah. Okay, so I'll give you a link to this in the email afterwards. So you want to look up the instrumentation of the pieces, right? But your second option is to actually imagine a situation in which you can play with the entire orchestra, right? In fact, that's a situation I'm faced with this next semester, in the spring semester, where I'm trying to go to some kind of hybrid model where I will start off the semester with the Cornell Orchestra with probably 4 speakers, and then we'll be online mode. And then there'll come a point where we'll start to have rehearsals in sectionals where like instruments are rehearsing with me over Zoom. And then once it gets warm enough for all of us to be outside in the tents, in the quad, we're going to rehearse towards the performance in May. And so, but even then, Bailey Hall will not allow me most likely to have 100 people on stage with the whole winds and brass. Right now, winds and brass and singing is not allowed indoors. So most likely I'm limited to repertoire that includes non-winds, non-brass. So I can use string instruments, percussion, harp, piano. So I have to limit the instrumentation to those instruments. So I'm still waiting on word from facilities and the university about what restrictions will be lifted, whether it'll be a much more open set of rules or not. So you can design a season, whether it's not the full symphony, but maybe it's strings, percussion, and harp and keyboard. Okay. And in fact, if you find a piece that's really great, I would love to see that. So one of the, let me just share what I'm planning right now. Where's that tab? Oh, no, that's not it. Is it this one? No, that's the on. Here we go. So what I'm planning right now is 2 concerts, and I'm going to probably divide the orchestra into two. Rather than have a CSO of 100 people and CCO of 25, I'm going to have 2 large string orchestras. And so one group will give a concert on May 2nd with these pieces. George Walker's Lyric for Strings, Marcos Balter's Frisson for solo flute and strings, and then 2 string orchestra pieces by Jesse Montgomery, who's a guest appearing on the 20th of this month, and then a piece by Carlos Simon, which is strings, piano, and percussion. And then I'm going to arrange, or if one of you arranges Florence Price's Adoration, I'll program that here. And then the concert on May 9th, I'm hoping that they'll let us have a little more wind players, which would allow me to have these 2 pieces. The DBR's Voodoo Violin Concerto No. 1, and then Florence Price's Symphony No. 4. But these 2 string orchestra pieces will also be programmed. So that's what I'm kind of planning with the 2 orchestras right now. So if you could design a season with this imaginary orchestra, you can do the pre-pandemic option of a full symphonic orchestra for 4 Masterworks programs, 1 young person's concert, and a pops concert. So 6 concerts altogether. Or you can do a post-pandemic plan where you do a reduced string orchestra or chamber music or any kind of imaginary or creative solution. So that's I'm leaving that up to you. Okay, so you can plan sort of a regular, normal orchestra season, or you can do something completely out of the box thinking. Okay, Daniel Romain did a performance with members of the New York Philharmonic and actors, and so it was a joint effort with the theater company, and there was a production called 12 Angry Black Men, and he was one of the musicians. And so it was a really amazing performance. It's been reviewed in the New York Philharmonic. So if you kind of look up 12 Angry Black Men and Daniel Romain, you'll be able to read about that. He's also done a collaboration with the New York City Ballet, where Lincoln Center is currently shut down, but they had New York City Ballet dancers all around the plaza area, and he was playing. I think he was the only violinist playing, and everybody's in white. So that was a possible solution. The New York Philharmonic right now has a truck that goes around to neighborhoods playing with chamber groups. So that's one of the ways New York Philharmonic has responded in terms of, because they can't do real with everybody. LA Philharmonic is doing the Sound and Stage series, which the first 2 concerts are now available. I'll send that as a link to you. They basically, instead of, Hollywood Bowl has a huge stage. So they are able to separate with plexiglass for winds and brass and reduce string sections. So instead of having like 70 people string section, they have like 22 people or so separated out, social distancing. So they're doing a repertoire that allows for that. And then they have sort of a Hollywood sort of movie person. So its production is really slick. And of course, Berlin Philharmonic is doing these digital concerts without audience, but reduced instrumentation. So many orchestras are coming out with different ways to respond. And unless there's a vaccine that's going to really solve the problem for a foreseeable time, orchestras are not going to survive unless they think creatively. So I would love for you to explore that even if you do a regular season, maybe even one concert, you think about what different ways can orchestras present concerts. Okay. All right. So I believe that assignment is due November 2. Yeah. So think about it. And then let me know if you have questions regarding that assignment. Okay. All right. Oh my God, this class should be 2 hours, but I'm trying to pack in too many things. All right, so let's go to the excerpts. So what I'll do is I'll go to the YouTube videos, and I've also put these into the link. And what I've done is with both of these excerpts, I've given you, rather than reduced versions, I've given you the whole orchestra versions for the Strauss and the Brahms. Okay, but you'll be conducting from these Thakan Makar excerpts. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll put in a small window so you can see me as well. Okay, so I'll put this. You can see me, right? Yeah. Okay. So what I'll do is we'll all conduct, right? And then I'm going to go into a mix of 1 and 3, depending on what the recording is doing, right? So I know it's not ideal to not have a real orchestra or an ensemble in front of you that they're responding off to what we're doing. But this piece requires you to, so there are a few options to doing a waltz, right? It's a triple meter, a 3/4, where you can be dee da da dee, be da dee da, be da da dee. Yam bim ba. So you can be in 1 all the way through like that. But there are places where yam bim bum bum bim bum. So you're not quite in sort of full 3 pattern, but there's a yam bim bum bum bim bum. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 dee ba dee. So it's you have to go in and out of 1 and 3. So I'll demonstrate with this one. Okay, this is a little sluggish. So So that's the end of the excerpt. It only goes to there. And so in the this YouTube clip, you have to find 2:10 or so 210 is when this starts. So the solo cello line, do, fa, re, yo, di, do, di. Right. All right, let's try it, everybody. Here we go. Here we go. Stay in one and a little faster. And 1, 2, 3. And also think about phrasing. So far we're encountering 4 plus 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 4-bar phrase. Another 4. 4-bar. There's a 6-bar phrase. Oh, it's a 7-bar. No, 6-bar. 4-bar. 1, 2, 3. And here's 4 plus 4. That was 8 bars. 4 bars. Okay, so that's the excerpt, right? So there are 2 places where you have to think about if you're going to be in 1 or 3. So which is right at the beginning, because he's the tempo that this orchestra is doing, because it's ben legato. Yadi dadi la di aro da da di di. So you may go into in 3 for 4 bars, gradually getting to 1. Okay. Another place is right here. Yum pop 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 beep pop yum pop 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 beep pop. And depending on how much slowing you want to do, maybe you want to do more than this recording is doing. Yum beep pop pop beep pop pop beep pop. Something like this. Okay. Also, what you want to do is think about phrasing, right? Mostly it's 4 plus 4 equaling an 8, right? Dee da 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 dee da dee da 4-bar. Dee da 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 do da dee. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One phrase, right? So what I usually do is I kind of mark the phrase that way, right? Dee da 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 pee da dee da. Ya dee da da do pee bum ba. So now you have 8 plus 8. That whole 16 bars is one sort of big chunk. And ya dee da ya da da 4-bar. Ya da dee da ya ba da ba ba. Second 4-bar. Ya da dee ya da 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 da. Ya da da dee da 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 da. So that's sort of 8 plus 8. And ba ba beep ba ba. So these 3-bar is sort of a connecting 3-bar phrase, and then starts up again, and so on. So you can organize this in one, because if it's in one, it's hard to know the phrase structure, right? So you can organize the phrasing that way, and that makes the difference between how you emphasize each bar of this 4-bar phrase. So for example, when you have so 1, 2, 3, 4. So just in a 4/4-bar, your emphasis of 1 and 3 is going to be heavier than 2 and 4. It's not going to be that'll be backwards phrasing, right? And so on. Okay, so in phrasing, you want to think about, okay, it's a 4-bar phrase. Which bars are getting the emphasis? Is it bar 1 and 3 or bars 2 and 4? Okay, all right. Now let's move to the Brahms excerpt, which has a completely different set of challenges. And it really requires to have a sense of ability to track all of the notes that are happening. Let me see if I can get the whole window in frame. There we go. Okay. All right. So this excerpt, which is also, I'll send a link. You got to start maybe 1411 or so. That's where variation 8, variation 7 comes to an end, and variation 8. So in variation 8, what we're trying to figure out in terms of why Marquand chose this excerpt. There we go. So presto non troppo, it's in 3/4. So you're trying to have the ability to track this very fast eighth note. Right? But then within this structure, Brahms does two things. So he has a bar like do di da da da, where it's a regular 3/4 where the emphasis is on 1, but the change of notes on B2, da di da da da, where the emphasis is on actually the 2. But then you have da da di da 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 di da di da da da, this sort of 6/8-ish bars where the emphasis on the fa mi de fa mi la, fa mi de fa mi la, re do si re do de, where it emphasizes the first eighth note and the fourth eighth note of the bar. So it's a quasi 6/8 inserted in this 1. So even though you're conducting in 1, 1 2 3 1 1 1 2 3 1 1 2 da 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 da. So you have to kind of incorporate that 6/8 feeling into this feeling, and then he goes into our ba like. Look at the second part of measure 327 and going to 328. Ya da 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 di da 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 di da 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 di da one. So instead of going 1 2 3 1 2 3, it's and of the beats that gets the emphasis. 1 and da 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 da, right? And that's hard. And then you have passages like here. If you only listen to the first part, 1 da di da bo da da do da di do da di do da di da, it's grouped in an overlay 2/4 that starts on B2. So there's 342, la si la, 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 e and da 1, right? So as you conduct the 3/4, 1 2 3 1 2 3, you have to think 1 2 1 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Right? So you have to think sort of this overlaid, and Brahms does this all the time, where he gives you sometimes simply instead of 1 2 3 1 2 3, he pushes the downbeat over one beat, and it goes 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, right? But instead he inserts a 2/4 figure, right? So this is the normal 1 2 3 1 2 3, but instead in 342 you get 1 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, right? Meanwhile, the bass line is da 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 di da da do di da da do do da da do di da 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 di da di da do da there. So on one part in the bass part, cello part, you have a 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and in the first part you have 1 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 da di da bo da bi da bo da bi da bo da bi da bo da bi da 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 di da da, right? So if you don't keep track and understand that, you will get off, because sometimes this is what people do at 342. They listen to the first violin part, 1 1 da da di da 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 da da, and then they're off by a beat. Okay, so this is a very challenging excerpt because you have to keep track of the syncopated or pushed off downbeat and insertion of a 2/4 figure here. So when I say he's annotate, there we go, annotate. Here we go. Here's a 2/4, 2/4, 2/4, 2/4. Make sense? So 1 2 1 2 1 2. I can't draw the numbers 1 2. Meanwhile, this is going 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, so trying to keep track of this mix of two different meters, actually, right? It's really fantastic because there's this tension of how long is this going to this confabulation of mixed meter going to go on, right? And then he has this magical moment. dee da 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 da, do da 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 da, dee da 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 da, right? And then boom, bim, ba. And then this is actually, I'm sorry, boom, bim, boom, bim, boom, bim, 2, 4 here again, right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? And you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, right? So if you don't get this moment right, this entry is really nightmarish for the second and third part players. All right, so it's this ability to be able to incorporate all of these different mixed meter within the 3/4 context, right? Brahms never wrote mixed meter, meaning like Stravinsky, where he doesn't go from 3/4 2/4 like this, but more difficultly, more interestingly, he layers over this very complex set of layered different meters over one another, right? And he's constantly playing with this idea of 2 against 3 somewhere in his music, right? And then here, it's a magical moment where you have the bass line, which and you have this upper part emphasis. Here's one. Let me get the poem, annotate. There we go. So here in the first parts or second parts, here's 1, 2, 3. So now the layering is off by an eighth note, right? Da da da. Here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, and so on, right? And then in the fifth part, dam bi da da da, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and then 2, 3. It should be 1, right? And separate 2, 3, so on, right? And then that is continued on in this last bar. Where part 4 stays in 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, ba. Bam, 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 ba. So only in the last part of the beat, right here, do they line up all together. So they've been all syncopated ba 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 against the da 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 ba. Right? So it's sort of a kind of a cruel joke where all the offbeat people, they have no idea whether they're going to be right until the last note. Right? So you as a conductor have to absolutely feel both the fourth part, and bam 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 bam. Right? So that's a very, very challenging thing to conduct. And I've seen many conductors who falter in conducting this passage. All right, so of the two, the Brahms is going to be the more difficult one to pull off. Okay, but I'm giving you the option of choosing either the Strauss or the Brahms to record. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll give you sort of a week to kind of look over both pieces. We'll on the Monday the 19th, we'll go over them in class, and then I'll give you until Wednesday the 21st to record them, and I'll give you feedback. Okay. Okay. I did it on time. Okay. I try to whiz bang through all of the material because I knew we had a lot to get through, and I kind of sped through a lot. But you do have the recording to review these things. Have a good break. I know this is not an ideal time in terms of your learning, but I'm really enjoying teaching this class with you guys. So have a good break on Wednesday, and send me emails if you have any questions. Okay, Peter, Rehan who's not here. I'm a little worried about him. Rehan and Claire, I need your video so I can review them for you. So Elgar or Brahms. Okay. All righty.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.